For those who don't know who Jeremy McGrath is, he was one of the absolute GOATs in Supercross in the 90s, probably even the GOAT. So since he is a celebrity in motorsports, of course he needed to have a game and thus entered Jeremy McGrath Supercross 98, a game developed by ElgatoHD, weird name, and published by Acclaim in the year 1998 in North America and Europe, in 1999 in Japan, all versions exclusively for the almighty original PlayStation. And as you can tell, you drive dirt bikes around and try to be first. Well, duh. Now in the main menu the most important modes are Race and Track Editor, but I will get to the latter later. So in race mode you have single race, which should be, I guess, obvious? At least I hope obvious? Pick a track, pick a bike and ride. Now you cannot pick any of these drivers you drive against, you just drive as yourself. And I think all these names are actually fictional because I couldn't find any of these participating against McGrath in his Supercross and motocross years. Even when it comes to the bikes, initially you only have two, a yellow 125 and a green 250, and depending on the track, one bike is actually slightly better than the other. There is motocross and supercross in this game because McGrath himself, while a multiple supercross champion, he also won a motocross championship back in the 90s, 1995 if I'm not mistaken. But what is the difference between these two? Well, to make it short, Supercross is usually driven in tracks that are pretty compact and usually in arenas or stadiums, and thus usually require slightly slower but agile bikes, and that is what the yellow 125 is for. It's also a bit more beginner friendly, let's say. In contrast, motocross has bigger and wider tracks that usually are outside of arenas or stadiums, and thus bikes with more power like the green 250 are required. Technically you can drive whatever you want at any time, and it is quite nice that before each race, yes, even during the championship, you can change your bikes, but if you want to take full advantage of what the bikes can do, then I suggest you use the 125 for Supercross and the 250 for motocross, even if you change these three settings on the bikes. And yes, you will notice the changes. The difficulty can also be changed, but for some reason the default is easy. I also tried this control system option, but I haven't noticed any difference, so I don't really know what this is for. Ghost racing is essentially time trial where you set a record, save your goals and try to beat it later on, if you want. Race season is nothing other than the usual championship. You have 11 races total and obviously your goal is to win it with the most points. Beat the championship and you will unlock all tracks you drove on, and also a new championship mode where you drive all tracks in reverse. Beat just the first track on the hardest difficulty, no, it's not easy at all, and then you will unlock a 1 vs 1 mode. Here you drive through all 11 tracks again, but without points. Your goal is to drive and win against Jeremy McGrath, and also no, he is not easy to beat. I actually like how the game has all these modes, especially the 1 vs 1 against McGrath himself was quite fun. Challenging because he's fast, and yes, rubber banding is this game's religion or something, but he also makes mistakes here and there. Even if you are far behind him, when he does a mistake you will know about it because the commentator actually mentions it, like in any other race with any other character, even you! Because the commentator actually does a fine job trying to give you the impression that you, or whoever is watching you play, are watching the race on TV. Yeah, sure, the commentator could still have been a bit better or a bit more active, let's say, but it's still fine, and he will always call you number one because you are number one. Visually the game looks actually quite nice. Sure, it's not AAA stuff, but overall still decent. Yeah, the draw distance pops in sometimes, but that was the norm anyway back then, but other than that, almost zero pop in, which was quite an amazing achievement on the original PlayStation. The frame rate can take a dip once too many riders are on the screen, a graphical glitch here and there, but that's nothing big to complain about. And the lighting is also quite nice, especially during the night. The sound is the typical "America, fuck yeah" stuff. The commentator has a slight raspy voice to come across as energetic and badass in the race, and music is rock on every corner, but during the races you mostly will hear the bikes, while the music will be barely noticeable anyway, so yeah, who cares. Now there is also a track editor, and while very simplistic by today's standards, maybe a bit simplistic for even back then, you can create whatever track you want on this grid using the options you have and then race on it alone with CPUs or a second player. This was actually a nice addition. Sadly though, you can't choose the time of day or the weather, but it's fine. The controls aren't anything special though. The bikes feel okay to drive and easy to adapt to. Well, unless you are so used to modern games to the point where you can't adapt to old controls. For me though, the controls weren't much of a problem, just like for you, subscribing and liking the video shouldn't be much of a problem either. For an added bonus, you can even use Nitro. That doesn't do all that much actually. Sure, it helps you jump higher and longer, but riding on a straight, there is barely any difference with or without it. Sure, you can also do a trick here and there, but this game isn't about that, so there are only one or two moves that do nothing but look somewhat cool. However, the major issue in this game, at least for me, is the camera. Maybe you've noticed by now that the camera is constantly moving, right? In itself, the camera, well, of course, should move, but the issue here is that the camera moves with every slight directional input, meaning the camera is constantly trying to be dead center behind you, to the point where the camera will then snap all over the place, and that can be really distracting and annoying after a while, sometimes even disorienting. Sure, this game isn't necessarily amazing or anything, but personally I have a soft spot for it, mainly because this was one of the very first games I've owned and played the most as a little shit on the almighty original PlayStation. And yes, this copy that I still own has been in my hands for almost 30 years, and yes, it still works flawlessly. See what happens when you take care of your games? But even trying to throw away my slight bias towards the game, Jeremy McGrath Supercross 98 certainly isn't a perfect game, a top tier game or anything, but for what it is, I would actually say that it is quite decent and I always have a blast with it, especially in the hard difficulty, trying to get the jumps right, etc.